Two people wandering around the tracks of Europe looking for a podcast that suits their needs. Oli Meggitt and Martin Southall are those two people. With the ability to chat shit about RC cars for less than an hour with their bare hands. The Bench Chassis Podcast, the podcast with no name. Except for that one.
Well, hello, welcome back. It's us. We are back again.
Yes, indeed. And whilst we said in the last episode things were hotting up on the track, we've also had plenty of off-track stuff in the last week or so.
Yeah, we have indeed. We've probably got quite a lot to cover then this time, haven't we? I suppose we were always planning to reflect back on the Halifax National after we previewed it previously. That was round 3 of the UK Touring Car Nationals. And we've got actually a great guest already lined up for that.
We do, but I think we need to talk about the off-track stuff too. So we'll do something different to usual. Instead of bringing our guest in right away, I think we'll kick off by talking about the dramas and then bring our guest in later to hopefully a more friendly atmosphere.
Sounds like a good plan to me, actually, yes. So we better get our soapboxes ready for this one, I think, as well, hadn't we? So here we go. Then let's jump straight into it. It's the Bench Chassis Podcast. It's episode unlucky 13. Let's find out who's been to chassis and more at Halifax.
This is the Bench Chassis Podcast. And now you've had your little break, it's back to Martin and Oli.
Right, well, let's kick things off then. In case you don't know of the dramas we're referring to, the Sunday morning of the National, the news came out that Richard Moore-Harris, who we interviewed on this podcast right at the start of the summer season, resigned as the chair of the BRCA 10th on-road section. Yeah,
so that was quite an interesting sort of news piece straight away on that Sunday morning. Jordan Norwood stepped in as the steward of the meeting. Jordan was the previous chair and is still part of the BRCA Executive Committee as the section liaison officer. So he kind of makes sure the sections are feeding the right info back to the exec. He obviously knows the touring car section very well. He was chair for a number of years and was due to be, he was racing at that event anyway. So he was there. He could step in with his expertise as steward of the meeting. And I guess post-meeting as well, Steph Abbott has now formally taken over as chair. He was the vice chair, although I'm not sure how widely that's sort of been publicised and announced, but that's kind of the situation. So I guess, worth starting off most importantly, the BRCA committee is a group of volunteers who are there to run the section. And as we've always said, people running events, running meetings, running federations, whatever it is, they are absolutely needed to keep this sport going, and their help is very much appreciated and needed. And both Martin and I have been part of the BRCA committee. Martin previously, me, I've been part of it a few times. I'm currently the international racing rep, so I'm responsible for getting our UK drivers to Euros and Worlds and promoting things like ETS and stuff to them as well. Martin, you were vice chair up till last year, working with Jordan as well. Can you reflect back on what you kind of saw Sunday or Sunday, and how does that relate to things you experienced from that relatively senior position when you were on the committee as well?
Yeah, so good point. So for those listening, I did 3 seasons as the vice chair alongside Jordan. I was present at all the nationals during that. Along with a number of the other committee members. Do I still see the same problems at a national meeting that I saw when I was still on the committee? Yes, I do. What I do see less of this year and of a more concerning nature is the amount of people at a race meeting. So we are 3 nationals in.
People from the committee side of things, rather than you don't have many races here.
From the committee. From the committee side of things. Yeah. So at the moment, we've obviously got, everyone knows Steph Abbott. Actually, I'm just going to caveat out quickly here. We are recording this on Monday, the 6th of July. So if anything comes out between then and Thursday, this is our record time now. So we're just working with the facts that as they still are as present of last week and as of today. So Steph Abbott We've been doing. He's been the national referee last season. Did a really good job of that. Stepped on as well, joined the committee this year as the vice chairman. Has carried on the role as the referee as well. So most of you will know him. He's on the rostrum all day Sunday. With he's a busy boy. He's got a lot to do. But that was the same at Stafford. And what I don't see, and I do see more of that around previously, is where's Steph's support worries me more. Because it feels like he's somewhat isolated on his own. He's doing a bloody good job of running the meetings. But these meetings also run in tandem with the racetracks. And with the support that the racetracks provide, the scrutineering teams, timekeeping, and all the other bits that go on around the tracks. It's a very difficult position to be in when you're one man and everything's coming at you quite quickly.
Yeah, and you and I both know from our own events that we organise that I think we both know straight away that whilst many people see us as the face of our respective series, there's a huge team, not just behind us, but actually alongside us, that people maybe don't realise quite how much stuff other people are doing minute by minute to make those races happen. And I definitely would agree with you. I think there's my biggest criticism of the Nationals, and even in the previous years, I think, is that there isn't anybody. It doesn't feel like there's anybody there really running the race. If that makes sense, running the event.
Yeah.
I suppose Steph is making sure the races continue, but no one's running and organising the event. Basically what I would always call what I would call a race director role. I think a lot of people confuse race director with things like timekeeper or announcer or referee. And to me, that's totally different. A race director probably never goes anywhere near the racetrack, really. The race director is making sure everything else is happening. And the timekeeper is the person making sure the computer is counting laps and sorting heats and things like that. The referee is the person refereeing, giving penalties, making sure everyone is at their marshalling positions, things like that. And an announcer is there to add atmosphere. So yeah, that's always the thing that sort of struck me over the last certainly this year from doing the couple of nationals I've done. I was at Halifax and I was at Cotswolds at the start of the season, and yeah, I agree with you. There doesn't seem to be that team at the track anymore.
Yeah, I think this has been coming a little while, and we can wind the clock all the way back to Cotswolds at the start of the season. Cotswolds have obviously had their struggles previously, but they had a pretty strong team there with the timekeeping and the scrutineering and keeping everything flowing. So while Richard was there, he could deal with the other stuff, and Steph could be upstairs and he could deal with the refereeing and move on with the day. And then we get to Stafford, and I always give props to Stafford for this. I think they run one of the best events in the country. They've got an excellent team down there. They've got the timekeeping. It's always military precision is probably a fair way to put it. And then their technical team and the support they have around there and around the racetrack from their members as well is second probably to no other circuit, really. The only other I think that probably comes that close is Eastbourne. So when we got to Halifax, who's it's an incredible facility, but they don't seem to have as many people on the support roles around there. And that baffles me, to be honest, because they're such an incredible facility. You'd think there would be more people there. And it was the biggest entry of the season, being one of the biggest tracks of the season as well. But there wasn't anybody else there. There was Steph. There was Chris Forrest, who's the secretary. So he's more on the administrative side of it more than the running side. And then yourself as the rep. So there was a lot of people light for what was potentially going to be a problematic event, and I think that's what came to pass. We were starting to see signs of that on Saturday with driver behaviour, and that, I don't know, maybe that was just the sun or something like that, but it was getting silly on Saturday. And then of course we got into Sunday, and then after Richard went, that was a pair of hands down. And then from that point on, yeah, I think things started to unravel quickly. I think it felt like people were trying to play the card because there wasn't really anyone really in control of the whole event and see what they could push to get away with. Even though Jordan did step up.
Yeah.
And he was a very stressed man for doing so as well, but should be applauded for doing so.
I was going to say, absolutely, something that I'd written in my notes here is I think, everybody at that track should be very thankful that Jordan was not only there, but prepared and happy to step up and continue that, because I'm not sure that the race would have actually been able to get running if he wasn't there as well.
No, he wouldn't have. He was sitting opposite me. And I've got to know Jordan very well over the years. And he was the reason I stayed on the committee last year, why he did his whole life event thing, got married and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided then to stay on for the year to help out, so he didn't have as much stress to worry about. And he's been looked so relaxed and calm this year at race meetings, and he was pitting opposite me at the weekend on Sunday, and you could see his demeanour changed, and it was like he'd switched straight back to where he was last year. And all of the things were back there across his face about why he didn't want to do this anymore. Just dealing with, well,
also, do we let's take a step back then, and what do we know about why Richard has chosen to step away? And obviously that's absolutely his personal decision, and if people aren't comfortable or not happy to continue the role, then in my view absolutely the right thing to do is step away. The dare I say it, the worst thing someone can do is stay on because they feel, well, they ought to stay on even though that's not a role they actually want to do. I think it's better that the committee and the race have the opportunity to figure something out with new people or have reorganize the roles, than to sort of have someone sort of just continue because they sort of feel they should. So I think absolutely, if he's not comfortable, he's not happy with the position he's in, then 100% the right thing to do is to step away.
Yeah, I agree. It's a voluntary position, as you said.
Yeah.
Those would have read his post said how mentally challenging the position is, and it's not a position to be taken lightly. No. we talked ahead of the AGM, and at the AGM about how big the role was, and he genuinely thought he could do it, and there wasn't any reason to believe that you couldn't be able to. But whatever reason you think of, whatever anyone's done something for, he put his hand in the air.
Yeah, and
that's far much more than anybody else that want to jump on Facebook and make their public opinions and everything, but they don't want to offer up, even if they do offer up a solution, actually, because they sometimes do. They're not the one to go, oh, well, I actually might help push that thing through. I just say, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Instead of, why can't I do this? And he put his hand up, and if he hadn't, we wouldn't have been going racing.
Yeah.
Because there was nobody else that wanted the position.
Yeah.
So it would have been a stalemate.
And I think that's quite interesting. We'll touch on that a bit.
Yeah.
In a few moments, but I think that's really interesting. And obviously, you're absolutely right there that we've got to have people that are prepared to put their hand up and take on the roles. And you said this role has a lot of responsibility and has a lot of challenges with it, and it seems like that's just been a bit too much for him in this case.
But it shouldn't, though, should it? Let's be honest.
It shouldn't.
No. It seems to be every walk of life and everything you participate to volunteering nowadays, that people seem to think because they have an opinion that theirs is the one that should matter more than everybody else's, and they're too vocal about it. Certainly online, but then equally, on the same note of things as well, when you are in the same position, you have to be measured with your decision process and opinion versus position, that kind of thing. That can be quite difficult, and ultimately I think that's kind of what started some of this off with a post that went up on Saturday evening.
And I know many people saw it, because while we were sitting around for dinner, there were plenty of pings going off on our phones, I think, of people sort of sharing that post, at least sort of behind the scenes, and for those of you that didn't see it, because I know it was subsequently deleted, it was basically kind of calling out that Richard believed that people were, let's call it, well, he was saying people were cheating in front wheel drive particularly, and doing bent things with the motors or stuff like that, and sort of saying he was going to crack down on that and do more detailed checks on Sunday, and I think that message is absolutely the right message, to be sending in terms of doing more checks and things like that. It's again something that I think has been missing from the Nationals is the tech process. It's always trying to find that balance, and we try and strike that all the time between how rigorous do you want the tech process to catch either people deliberately cheating or where there's something that they generally didn't know they were doing wrong, versus how much time do you want people sitting in tech and measuring and checking all these things every single time? And that definitely reduces the fun of things. And, we've talked a lot about things like ETS series where, one of the big things they do is the tech process is really minimal, and people go, yeah, that's no problem, it's a touring car, I go and race it, which works to a level, but then it creates its own issues, if you're not doing some of those other checks as well. I will personally say, though, that I thought what he posted there wasn't particularly helpful. The way he then seemed to detail all of this stuff you could do to cheat as well, and these, YouTube videos and stuff that he'd seen. If I put my race organizer hat on, that was quite frustrating, because what you're then doing is you're pointing out to people who may not have known anything about these different ways to tamper with motors or whatever, how you can now go and do that. So you've now alerted the whole world through that, and you're posting that as the chair of a BRCA section. So I'll be honest, I thought that wasn't the best thing to post. And from my perspective, that when you're in that sort of position, you and I both know we're always very careful about the things that you post on Facebook, because you can't differentiate between Martin as Martin Southall going to race day to day and Martin as face of rug racers. People don't see a difference between the two things. They are one and the same thing. So whatever Martin posts, Martin is posting it both as Martin Southall and as Martin rug racers. So
yeah, I
think that's something that had certainly maybe irked a few people as well. So I think that was something that wasn't the best thing to do in my view at all.
No, I didn't see most of it, because I was out eating and then straight into the England game and then bed, and then when we got to trackside in the morning, was hearing some stuff about it. There was some noise about it being done on Saturday. I don't know who it was targeted at. From my understanding, it was a car in the Heat 1 was looking faster than others, and if that's the case, just pull it in and check it.
Yeah.
They've bought an FDR reader, and that's the first point of contact, right? Get that on there and get an FDR check done on the thing, because front wheel drive's a pretty easy one to see if there's an issue. They're all geared the same, and they all go down the straight and around the track at exactly the same speed. So if anything's doing anything different, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But the point you make there is a good one. Is post. Who do you post as well? And I generally prefer to separate. I don't really post much on Facebook at all, to be honest. If I do, it's very rare. And if I do as an opinion on something, I post as me. So it's quite clear that it's my opinion, because even with my team at Rug Racers, we don't always agree on everything.
No.
So when we create our comms, I discuss them between us before they're posted out, so everyone knows what's coming.
Yeah.
And what time it's going out, and what we can expect on questions. We kind of pre-brief effectively, this I'm going to put this out, we might get this question, these will be the answers, that kind of thing. But that's what we have to do, because if I post, like say on a Rug Racers as me, then opinion often overrides conjecture of fact.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't do. They have to be separate. I can have my own opinion, and ironically, it doesn't actually have to align with what Rug Racers is, because we make the decisions for the race series. I can disagree with my own team and still work together with them on a path forwards. But the differentiation between posting as you and posting as an official, I think you need to be careful.
Yeah.
Personally.
And I think one of the things then that I saw from this as well is sort of what the domino effect is from Richard resigning, what that sort of meant next. And obviously Facebook, everybody has an opinion, and that I think is being honest, I really think that's then not helped with stuff as well, because again, you ask 50 people, you get 50 different opinions, and everybody is absolutely convinced their opinion is right and everyone else's is wrong. And one of them that really irked me was the post that was done under King of Clubs. And again, kind of coming back to the same point, though, I know that was Andy Hyde who wrote that. And again, for me, the first thing there is that's been posted as King of Clubs, but it's Andy's opinion. So unless, maybe he has discussed that with the whole King of Clubs team. I don't know exactly who is on the King of Clubs team. I think it's all the different clubs that are part of it, but it's been posted as King of Clubs. So it's now posted as the King of Clubs opinion. And I'm not sure if that is the case across all of them. And it came across to me as an awful lot of clickbait, really. It was a lot of words without actually offering any solutions to things. And that's the thing that, frustrates me with that. Someone else who's running a race series could have the opportunity to say, look, here's some ideas. Here's how we could potentially go forwards. Here's what I've learned from King of Clubs, what we could do to make this better now and try and go forwards. And it didn't offer any solutions to me at all. And that's the thing that sort of frustrates me. Someone that could offer some solutions isn't doing that.
Yeah, for the amount of work that goes on in other areas, I'm inclined to agree. I mean, I read the posts, I don't comment. I'm not interested, but the opinions always seem to be the same. And what's always interesting is it always seems to be the same people that are offering up this contra opinion as well. And they're the same people that don't really do anything. They don't offer anything to the hobby. They just, an empty can rattles the loudest. They just come on, smash away on the keyboard, telling what everybody should do, but they don't really do anything. So they're the kind of ones you kind of half scroll through. I do like seeing when there's a Peter Wint comment jumps in, because it feels like some common sense has been reapplied back to the equation somewhere along the line. But it is technically, like you say, it's a series commenting on another series, but they're not involved in the series. They're not participating in it. They're not seeing what's going on under the covers behind the scenes, other than what they're hearing from racers and people. And you and I know as well as anybody else that hearing secondhand information from somebody else, it's always the same thing. You've got 40 facts coming from disreputable sources with disingenuous ideas of what they're trying to push across. So I don't think it doesn't help the situation. It doesn't make the section look good. Now, there's obviously problems. No section doesn't have problems.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like it's just shining a magnifying glass on it, but without really offering up help or solution to those problems.
And I think you're not expecting everyone to agree with stuff, because let's be honest, if everybody agreed with everything, life in general would be very, very simple for everybody. But it's the nature of things that people will disagree on stuff. People will have different opinions on what they think the right way to do things is and isn't, and that's absolutely fine. And you've just touched on, I've been in many meetings across different series where there is disagreement about stuff, and it doesn't matter what that team is. Coming back from the ENS this weekend as well, there was stuff that Uwe and I disagreed on, but it doesn't change anything between us. We go, right, what's the right thing to do? That one, I'm going to, okay, I don't think it's 100% right, but that's your call to make that call, and we'll move on. And I'm not going to criticize it or anything like that, because that's how we sort of progress it. Turns out it was pretty much the right call, so that was all good. Sometimes it will be, sometimes it won't be, but then if it wasn't, I wouldn't then turn around and criticize anything as well. So I think that's an element that racers always keen to jump on this. Well, I've got this idea, it must be the right idea, everyone else's idea is wrong, why isn't everyone listening to me? And there isn't let's turn that around and say, well, can I try and understand someone else's view on that one? Can I try and understand someone else's opinion and see, maybe they have a point, maybe I need to change my view. Is there some collaboration that could actually happen there that gets us to a better answer for everyone?
Oh God, wouldn't that be nice? I think the key word there is, as you just said, it's the collaboration. No problem. People have different opinions. This is a podcast. This is opinions. And contrary to popular belief, people probably won't realise as much how many opinions you and I differ on. But we're still we're still capable of functioning as adults and discussing them without taking to Facebook and being spiteful about anything, because that's how things are done. That's how life is run in discussion, and that's how I felt on the BRCA for the first 2 years of my tenure with the committee we had. For the first 2 years, I thought it was brilliant. And as someone that works in big business, dealing with big contracts, industry, and huge dealing with loads of teams of peoples, we had a group of people that worked really, really well together, a really good co-op, really good collective, and that was what made it bearable towards the end of that time, was just sticking with it, because it was more a case of staying in the trenches and helping out people you form relationships with. So to see it kind of just split open across Facebook with everyone thinks it's just as easy as a click, we can fix this, we can do that, you can change this, you can do that, you can't. And sadly, from Richard's point of view, that's what he's also found out as well, is you can't change what you think you can change. We didn't do it because we were idle and couldn't be bothered.
Yeah.
But, you know, we are where we are right now.
Yeah. And I suppose the final point I wanted to kind of make on that situation is where people have then talked about, oh, you know, it's so bad that we keep losing all these volunteers. But I also want to look at the flip side of that actually, yes, except the BRCA committee changing the committee over every few years happens, and it has happened for a long time. It's not many sections that have had long-standing people for decades, and that's not necessarily a bad thing if you get different ideas and different people with some motivation coming to do things. But we've just been putting EWS stuff together and realised this is going to be our 15th season, and
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. But if what four or five of us who are doing the organising there are the same 4 or 5 people who were there on day one 15 years ago.
That's really cool.
And yes, absolutely, the team's changed, the team's evolved as well around those people, and some people have come in, some people have left. That's absolutely fine. But that doesn't feel ungovernable to me, that if we've managed to keep a pretty solid core team together for that long. You guys at Rug Races have done similar, and you've obviously made a big change a few years ago, but it's been pretty stable since then as well, and was stable for many years before that. ETS has had a stable team for its whole 20-year history.
Yeah.
Many race series, many race events, many clubs around the country, rely on people that have been there for a long, long time as well. So it's not, in my view, it isn't a terrible situation where the sky is falling down. There's definitely some tweaks and things that should be made in that space, but we've got an awful lot of people that are dedicated to RC car racing and making RC car racing happening in this country and around the world. And just because that one part of it maybe isn't working as well as it should be, doesn't suddenly mean we need to throw everything around touring cars up in the air and restart it again. And that's maybe the focus that we're missing.
Flexibility.
Yeah,
that's the frustration, and people don't realise how long it takes to do anything. Even getting a committee together, it's pretty difficult just planning a meeting and getting the group of everyone together. Everyone's busy in life, and no one gets paid for it. It's done, as you've said before, it's hobbyists trying to run a national sport on a Tuesday evening in 2 hours.
Yeah,
and that's no different for the race series as well. You find the time where you can to get together to do these things, but the difference is we have flexibility. If we don't like something, we can change it. From being inside the BRCA, if we want to change something, it's difficult. Certainly when it's all written in the rule book and it's got a number next to it, it's very, very complicated to do. And it's a source of huge frustration. All I would say on the chairman side of it is it's a difficult group. There's no doubting that. But if you need to know the races, you need to know the rules. And I'm not saying the culture can't be changed. The question is, does it need to be changed? I'm not sure it does. It just needs control. And someone's a solid hand on the rudder, because it isn't ungovernable. I don't think it was ungovernable for the last few years. You just get to a point where you've had enough. As I said before, I just got fed up with dealing with man children more than dealing with, how we could improve events and stuff like that. And driver behaviour issues more than anything else. And, we kind of got ahead of that for a while. There was that big ban hammer thrown around that was joked about for a couple of seasons before that. But then everyone started behaving.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's tough.
It is, yeah.
But opinion's opinion, isn't it? At the end of the day, if you want to do something about it, don't just talk about it. Do something about it.
Yeah.
Put your hand up and do something about it. Facebook post doesn't change a bloody thing, ever.
No. In my mind, there are 2 ways to do something about it. Number one is, you're the person that does something about it and puts your hand up and tries to change something. Or number 2, you decide you don't like what you see in there and you walk away and you go somewhere else and do something else. You can't sit in the middle and say, I don't like this, but I'm going to keep coming here and complaining about it.
Some have, though, haven't they? You see some of the people, they talk about, that they've stopped nationals because they don't like X, Y, and Z, and fair play. They've voted with their feet.
Yeah.
But they're not then on there on the same note as well, saying, if you change all this and do all this and take my opinion on board as gospel, I'll come back and race. Because it's obviously not bad, is it? Because, it's the numbers say it was pretty good.
Yeah. I suppose just to wrap up that sort of committee part, probably then, I think obviously most important thing is if you're at any of the nationals, listen to all the people listening now, make sure you give Steph and the team the support they need, and have a think about, do you want to be part of that committee in the near future as well? What can you bring to that as well? I think having new people in is always a good thing, but also be aware of what you're kind of getting yourself in for too, and have a real serious think about that. And I think that any of the existing committee would be more than happy to sit down and chat with you about what their role actually means, what they think could be improved in their role, what the opportunities are. And it would be good to have people that are interested in that. And I don't think we've ever got to, or haven't had in the last decade probably, any sort of actual really contested votes at any of the AGMs for any positions. It's a case of sort of looking around the room and saying, well, is someone going to put their hand up for that role, or we're just not going to have a timekeeper this year, or we're not going to have one of those things. So it'd be good if we actually had 3 people going, I can do that, and then either we get all 3 of them on board and share the workload out, or someone says, right, this is what I want to do, and people go, yeah, that's the direction we think we should go in.
That'd be the dream, wouldn't it? But it's difficult to sell it. Just looking at what's going on. Why would you want to? Is the first question you have to ask. Why do you want to do it?
It's a good question to ask, but then I'm going to pose that question back to you. But I'm going to answer. I'm going to answer for me first. Why do I do what I do? Because I love racing as a sport. This is an accessible form of racing. It's the cheapest form of racing by a million miles, despite what Facebook says. And there is an immense social aspect to it as well, which I really enjoy. And I have no aspirations to win races. I know I'm not going to win races. I go to races because of the people that are there, and spend time with the people that are there, get to go to some fantastic facilities around the country and around the world. And I'm fortunate that I've made that into effectively a part-time job for me as well on the side. But the stuff I do when I'm doing it volunteering is because why do I do what I do with the BRCA committee at the moment and try and get our drivers to Euros and Worlds? Because I want to make sure they've got those opportunities. I can see a lot of talent that's there. I'm fortunate that I've been able to go to those. I know the way to get people to those races now. It can be overwhelming for people to understand what it's about, but I want to make sure people can go there if they want to go there. So that's why I do it.
Yeah,
and that's what I'd say. That's what I'd say to anyone else. If you genuinely want to do something, then do it.
But would you want to be the chairman of the 10th section?
Are you asking me that question?
I am.
No. But I've got a very different answer to most people for that.
No, that's fair. Yeah, understandably.
Yeah.
My answer's not that different for you. I do it because I love racing and spending time with people. I don't always race. I go to a lot of events. I don't race. I travel around Europe. I don't race. And I'm just there for the banter. But, I run my race series and I run a club. And let's forget that. A race series, as you know, is hard work.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have a club. And that takes up a lot of time, to be honest. That's a weekly event. Even before this, we were just confirming of getting stuff ready for our post to go out for Monday for the booking in process and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then obviously, the obvious question is, why was when I left last year and the question was already posed then, why do you not want to become the chairman? And just don't want the hassle, to be quite honest, because you're not looking for a pat on the back. It is a thankless task, and it's just so frustrating being handicapped from doing things. I think I just didn't need that in my life. I've got enough other things to do. I still feel I contribute enough to this hobby that not being involved with that anymore would be my thing. But then the question will come out for the next person as well. Why do you want to do the role? And that's the hard sell. We should be saying, yes, you should want to do this. But
I would like to hope that there are people out there with the same sort of passion that you and I and others have got to be involved in RC racing and involved in organising racing stuff, but aren't already committed to multiple event series, etc., to do that. So I think that's the crux of it, is people like yourself and I are trying to do too many things if we do that as well, and then we'll never do anything that well if we're trying to do all those different things. If somebody had that, the way you've just talked about there, if you had all that passion but didn't have rug races, didn't have your weekly club to organise, I'd be saying absolutely you're the right person for that. Because all that stuff that you find difficult then suddenly becomes a load easier if you've got the time to deal with it.
There was a time it was. I mean, I don't want to. It's difficult to be on. I have to be honest.
Yeah.
I have to be honest. And when I stepped into the role, I was volunteered for the role by a friend, and I thought, you know what? Yeah, I can try and bring some of what I'm doing to help. And behind the scenes, along with people like yourself and Elliot Harper, and I would still some of the other members of the committee short as well. But we did a lot of good procedural stuff in the background. Races don't see, we all the contracts for tyres, for additive, for tracks, procedural stuff, and how things go in the background. Hopefully they're still using it. There's a lot of work there to get all that done. But I enjoyed all that aspect of it until the last year when it just got too much, and then it was my enthusiasm was beaten out of me. I was hanging in there for that camaraderie, there's people you spend the time with. But how do I say that someone who says to me, and we had these conversations before the AGM, a couple of people had approached and said, about the role, and you try and explain it to them enthusiastically. And I'm wondering if I reflect back on that now, if I maybe was over enthusiastic from a selfish point of view, knowing that if you're enthusiastic to selling them this position, selfishly that they're going to be involved in it, because then you're benefiting from being able to go racing again. So I do question if I did some of that as well previously, maybe or not, but there are good people out there, but selling them to come and do this is difficult. It's hard to see the reward right now, and the reward should be in the pride of what's been done. At the end, I can stand there. I can stand on my racetrack on Saturday evening after a track build and just look around, and I'm proud straight away of what's happened. And then normally on the Sunday as well, when we take that picture with the whole shut down, I'm proud of what we did. I always walked away from the Nationals relieved that I was going home.
Yeah.
I don't know how to change that. Yeah. Very different feeling. Whew.
So, shall we talk about we want to bring our guest on shortly, I think, and talk about Halifax in a bit more detail. But is it worth us, on that note, kind of rounding this off with, we said we started this podcast, this wasn't going to be about listing results and stuff like that. So we're not going to talk about how Elliot won modified and stuff like that, and how Zach was back to his domination in stock. But do you think that some of the atmosphere there was different because of the situation with the committee and with the chair stepping down on that morning? It felt odd in the pits to me, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what exactly it was.
I honestly believe that some people just decided it was an opportunity to push their luck and take the piss and see what they could get away with.
Sort of like if you're at school, it's like having a supply teacher step in for the day.
Like having a supply teacher step in for the day. And to a certain extent, rightly so, but there was stuff going on that I was very disappointed about. But equally on the same note, I wasn't going to prepare to just stand out there. I did actually have a go at a few people because it was pissing me off. We've got rules and procedures and stuff like that, and everyone knows what they are, and they were just being flouted all over the place. And we talked about, I'll just talk about the tyres quickly, the contacts that we run this year, and they're a bloody good tyre. I don't think anyone's going to complain about that. They're heat sensitive.
Yeah.
And when you're not allowed to have tyres warmers on the car, trackside, there's people walking onto the track and putting the cars down with seconds to go. With the warmers, they're taking the warmers off as the car's hitting the tarmac. They shouldn't even be coming through the gate.
Yeah.
Like that. So there was stuff like that going on. That was the stuff I was seeing. Yeah, people were complaining about each other, all sorts.
And does that also, I think that, if I reflect back on it, partly comes back to that point of there just isn't enough committee people there that's organising the event to spot that sort of stuff. And essentially Steph's stuck up on the driver stand the whole day. He can't go and stop someone kind of doing that. As you mentioned, Halifax, despite being a fantastic facility, doesn't seem to have a big club and team around it to provide. Did they really provide enough people for things like scrutineering and stuff like that? Would be very easy as well with that, the way that's laid out, to have someone on the gate to do those sorts of checks before people even get into the track area.
Yeah, it has to be the shortage of personnel, because it didn't happen at Cotswolds. It didn't happen at Stafford. I'm sure as hell with Mike Hawk Haswell in the cabin as well. It won't happen at West London.
No. Yeah.
But there was a lot of things that were going on that were not really on, and it was almost a bit embarrassing. There are a good few junior drivers there as well, and seeing and hearing some of the stuff I heard that weekend, it just reminded me why I don't want to do that kind of thing again anymore. We even jokingly, as we left the track, one of the first things Ethan says to me as we left the track is, "Don't you dare put your hand in the air to do that again."
So, should we spin this around now and make this a bit more positive? So,
let's do that.
In my mind, and he's a friend of both of ours, so I think we were both incredibly pleased for the person who finished second place in modified this weekend, and was, I'll be honest, was a comfortable second from most of practice onwards, and we thought it was absolutely right then for us to get him on the podcast for this episode, didn't we?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, this is going to be brilliant.
It is. So, it was a really great result. Matt White finishing up second place in modified. We think it's his first podium at the Nationals since Eastbourne in 2019, despite him being at the Nationals for many, many years. Let's talk to him all about that, and let's bring him onto the podcast then.
We'll be back very, very shortly.
This is the Bench Chassis Podcast. Let's bring on a guest, shall we?
So, Matt White then, the first podium at the Touring Car Nationals, we think, since Eastbourne 2019. So welcome back to the podium and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here. Yeah, I think it's 2019 Eastbourne. I thought about it on the way home, and that was where I got to, and I went back and checked the results. That's the last one I could find, so I think that's right.
So... are you going?
Go on, Mark. Yeah, no, you go.
No. I'm intrigued now. So I was just going to go straight in, obviously. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On fire all weekend. Car looked absolutely fantastic on Sunday as well. Got the pleasure to watch all those finals play out. So have you always been in modified, Matt, or have you dabbled a bit in other classes as well?
So other classes, yes, but touring car, always modified. I think when I started touring car racing, I'm not sure stock was even a thing, to be quite honest. I think it was modified. It was 12-turn brushed, so it's a long time ago. It was 12-turn brushed, and then I think we went to unlimited brushed, and then eventually into brushless. But I think when I first started, 12-turn brushed was only one class of modified. I think there was like a GT class or something, which I think had like 20 people or something like that at a national, but I think that was about it. But other than that, everyone ran modified, and for a good number of years, there was only really one class, and it was only quite a bit later, after I started, that stock racing became a thing. Really, stock classes, but in Europe, it wasn't ever really a thing.
So you mentioned off-road there. So
yes,
I know you raced off-road really kind of before you raced touring car. So let's kind of wind the clock back then. How did you get started in RC, and talk us about that and your off-road experience?
Yeah, I think there was like a couple of things that happened together. I'm not quite sure kind of what the order was, but so we had some family friends who lived in, a couple of hours away in Ipswich, I think, and used to go a couple of times a year. And their son, who was like a couple of years older than me, I think he had a Tamiya grasshopper, and we used to play with that around the garden, around the road and stuff. And kind of around about a similar time, two families down the road where I lived, so their kids that were also a couple of years older than me, they were racing at a local club. Know anything about it? I think my parents could talk to their parents, and one thing led to another, and me and my dad went down there one week, and it's like, this looks all right. And the club was like 3 minutes walk from where we lived, so
pretty convenient then.
It's pretty convenient. So we and that was probably late 80s, 87, 88, something like that. And so I'd have been 7, 8 years old, something like that. And my dad bought me a car for Christmas, and that was that, I guess, really. Kind of, it was off road, like you say. Raced outdoors on grass during the summer, like indoors in a small sports hall in the winter, and that's how it started. Just me and my dad.
Are we a similar age then? I think it must be. He was 7 or 8 years old in '87. I'm like, oh yeah, I was the same age then as well. Was there a sand sculpture there as well around that?
Probably. I can't remember, to be honest. But I started with an RC10. So I had an original 6-gear RC10. So obviously all the re-releases that have been over the last couple of years are kind of like, I can't remember them the first time around. So
there's been about 35, hasn't there, in the last 2 months?
More than that, I think, yeah.
I think there's every flavour. They've got ones with slightly different nut colours as well, just in case you didn't.
Yeah, and most of them aren't even re-releases now. They just I had no idea where that came from, but yeah, it's become a thing, hasn't it? So but I just raced off road for a number of years, and probably the least 10, 15 years, I guess, raced off road and started doing off-road nationals late 90s. I guess when I could start to drive, so it would have been late 90s. Mm-hmm. Started doing off-road nationals, and then that was kind of around about the time where touring car kind of started to become a thing, because obviously there was the Worlds in the UK in '98 in Newcastle, and that was kind of the launch almost, wasn't it? A lot of the manufacturers that were getting involved in touring car then were the off-road manufacturers, because they were basically just shrunk off-road cars. A lot of them were just shrunk off-road cars, like Schumacher, Losi, Yokomo. All the off-road brands got into off-road. So kind of by default, a lot of the drivers did as well. And so I started running touring cars in my local club just for a bit of fun on a Wednesday, and then that kind of grew. And then there was a few years where I raced both national series, which was hard work. And then just eventually started just doing touring car racing, and haven't done a huge amount of off-road since. A couple of nationals for fun about 10 years ago, but that's about it. So that's been my journey, I guess.
And that time when you were racing both on-road and off-road nationals, feels like that's probably about the peak of both of those classes as well, in terms of competitiveness, drivers and teams and stuff being involved.
I think it was the peak of on-road, but I think off-road was in a bit of a lull. Mm-hmm. Because I think in all honesty, what happened is touring car grew, off-road died off a little bit, because the same people just went to race touring car.
Touring cars, yeah.
So, and the manufacturers migrated a bit across. The manufacturers naturally pulled some of their drivers across. Mm-hmm. And so it was probably the peak of one and maybe the trough of the other, actually, in all honesty. Yeah. I think off-road nationals at their worst got down to about 80 entries or something like that.
Oh, as low as that? Okay.
Yeah, 80, 90 entries. Some of I vaguely remember, so yeah.
And I know you've also done some 12-scale racing, quite a lot of 12-scale racing as well.
I did, yeah.
How's that fitted in with all of that too?
Can't quite remember. I think, when would that have been? Probably, it was around about the time of the on-road Worlds in South Africa, I think, whenever that was. Can't remember. And I actually got asked to try I think it was a Corelli 12-scale car, from a magazine article, which I'm not sure the article ever got printed, but I did it.
we'll gloss over that part.
Yeah, we
won't ask why.
No, I can't remember. So I did it. It was a review car, and I ran the national and made the second or third in the B final or something like that. And so it was just sort of like, well, I think that happened around about the time that my off-road was starting to die off as well. So that kind of became a thing to do during the winter instead of off-road during the winter. So I got to a position where I was doing off-road and touring car in the summer and touring car and 12-scale in the winter. So that's kind of where that started, and then ran for took that a bit more seriously, ran for Corelli for a few years. Then ran for V-Design, I think, for a couple of years. Ran for Zen for a couple of years, and then kind of backed that up as well. And now still do a little bit at my local club in the winter, but haven't raced a national for a good few years. So did okay. Won one or two nationals, TQ'd a couple of nationals. Probably should have won a championship in stock one year, but had a couple of random issues at one round, which kind of cost me. Ended up in second, but it still went pretty well.
Yeah. So after such a storied outing, I mean, you've covered everything. Already there, already. So we've got no more questions. So when did you focus solely on TC? Was there a catalyst for that, or because you were running these multiple classes, or you just decided it was time to just settle into one?
I think I can't remember exactly what happened. I remember roughly when it happened. It was late 2000. I think it was actually the year. I think it might have been the year Chris Granger joined Schumacher, so it would have been 2009-ish, because after the Worlds in Thailand. And I think that year, the Schumacher team had grown. Chris had joined, Lee joined, a couple of other guys I think had joined. It was just sort of like, well, there was more of us. We'd got a new car because the previous car we'd had some struggles. So just sort of thought, well, let's just give this a focus for a year and see how we get on. And like, because I suddenly went to practice at the Nationals, had my best year by a million miles, and it's sort of like, okay, maybe there's something in this. So oddly, it's funny because although I've raced off-road for a number of years, we raced off-road, on grass and stuff in the summer, but indoors on carpet in the winter. And then we actually raced on foam, so it was basically like racing wide touring cars effectively. Yep. Oh, and I never actually raced wide touring cars, but we were racing buggies on foam, so it's basically the same. And I remember my dad always said to me, I don't really know why you bother in the summer, because you're a lot better off on carpet than you are on road effectively than you are off road. So I guess it wasn't a huge surprise that when I actually did it properly, I kind of did okay. So it's probably always there.
So let's start talking about some of those highlights then. I mean, this could go for a while. If you've been doing this since 2009, that's going to put you in for about your 17th season of Nationals.
Oh, I don't know.
Any over those years, obviously many podiums, and the reason you're here today is because we've hit one again at the weekend since 2019. But any standout performances over that? Any standout podiums, wins over them years?
I guess that one of my favourite tracks is always Mendip, and I always went really well at Mendip, and I think I made my first podium at Mendip. Really nice day. The track was really good. The grip was really high. I think I finished third or something like that. I have no idea what year it was. It was probably 09, something like that. 09, 10 maybe. Something like that. And then I actually had my first and only Touring Car National win at Mendip as well. So that's, like I said, Mendip's always been a track that was good to me. As has Halifax over the years, actually. So always been pretty good to me. But it's ironic because Mendip was it was a wet day, and I've not been great in the wet other places over the years, if we're really honest. I mean, anyone that saw practice last weekend would have known that. But for some reason that day in the wet at Mendip, I think I TQ'd 3 rounds or something like that, and won a leg of the final, second in the final, and that was enough to win the Nationals. So I guess that's the certainly the touring car highlights, winning a National. So it's the only one I've won. So that has to be it, I guess.
Yeah. And I suppose it's interesting because Halifax and Mendip now, it's sadly one of the tracks that's gone, and actually something we'll talk about. We've got on the list to talk about with you in a bit is around kind of how tracks and things have evolved. So we'll leave that for the moment and come back to Mendip in a bit. But very similar actually between Mendip and Halifax in the style of track, at least. Both two sort of big gas tracks.
Gas tracks, yeah.
And then I suppose that's no surprise. Maybe those are the two tracks you've done best at. But then actually, with the wind coming from the wet race, it's quite a different sort of style of driving.
That was a bit strange. I can't explain it, because it was funny because we had I think the previous National before Mendip had been Halifax, and it rained there as well. And I remember in the finals I was nowhere.
Not winning.
Not winning. Definitely not winning. And then took the same wet car and put it down on the track at Mendip, and it was like, okay, this works pretty well then. And one of those things, I guess.
And I suppose alongside Nationals and things like that in the UK, obviously you raced plenty of other races in the UK aside from Nationals too. But you've also done many races around the world, including ETS races, Euros, Worlds. Yep. Me and you had a trip to the Reedy race as well. And I know you've got, talking about off-road, going back to off-road, you've booked Vegas for later in this year to do the Associated Vintage race. I am
going to the Associated Vintage race in Vegas later in the year, yeah. I mean, it just looked like a great race last year.
Absolutely.
The irony of it is, as you know, it was many of the things I hate about racing, that it's absolutely huge.
Yes.
But it just looked like a great race. So when it came out, they were running it this year. I was like, well, yeah, why not? So, but yeah, I guess I did off-road Euros. I think the first off-road Euros I did was in about 03, something like that, in the UK, in Tiverton. Yeah, and then did one in Italy in 05 at Clegneo, where they had the Worlds. They had touring car and off-road Worlds. Did the Euros there. Did the Euros in France. That might be all the ones I did. France was fun. It was a grass track, and at the time, that's what most Euros are usually on dirt. And so the Brits, the top guys, Neil and Lee and stuff, they knew what they were doing, and it was fine. But for the rest of us, it was always hard work. But going to Euros on grass was a lot of fun, and that's actually probably one of my best off-road races. Actually, that one. So I made a B final at the Euros, and it was a funny final because we had 10 Brits in the same B final.
Right.
Now, oh dear, who was BQ?
I can't remember, but as you'll know, B finals aren't always the cleanest at Euros.
No, because they basically, I mean, I went. That's the thing I noticed going to Euros compared to off-road compared to on-road is suddenly, because they're only single leg as well. It's basically, well, I haven't made the final. I've got to do one more race, and it doesn't matter.
So we had 10 Brits, and before the start of the final, we had basically Mick Cragg had appointed himself as an official bookmaker, and sort of went along and solicited €10 from each of the drivers for the pot for the winner. And then about 30 seconds after Mick had got final agreement from all the drivers, Franz Heinsbruck was referee, and he sort of declares that he wanted a nice clean race. I think we all died.
How many cars made the first corner?
I have no idea, but it was good fun.
And you've also done plenty of on-road races as well around Europe and around the world. What's been your highlights of that? Not necessarily always just about results, but in terms of the experiences you've enjoyed the most or remember the most.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Euros always used to be a lot of fun because, and I'm going back to sort of like late 2000s, and they were always sort of 120, 150 people, one class, always good races. And then they sort of, I think Euros naturally tailed off a little bit, didn't they? They weren't as popular, and people didn't think they were as good at races and stuff. And I think there's probably some truth in that. And I've not actually done one since actual Euros, but we had the Euros in Germany. That was good fun. They went back there a couple of years ago. Actually, I forgot on the track, Turkheim. That was good fun because it kept raining and then it was dry and raining and dry, and that was a good fun race. Worlds. I mean, California was good a couple of years ago. That was first big race I've done for a lot of years, but that was good fun. Usually good fun races, and ETSs some good ETSs, and they're always kind of different. I guess they got more popular as Euros kind of tailed off a little bit. We did one in Appledore, and we spent 2 days drinking tea basically because it was just raining for a couple of days. That was a lot of fun. But Worlds in Heemstead, that was a good race actually in 2012. That was fun. So just enjoyed a lot of good races actually, around the world, and travelled to a few places, and not huge amounts, not as much as some others, but still enjoyed it along the way.
And I guess the thing as well, the reason I mention that is, yes, you've had support and sponsorship from various companies, and obviously, as a national winner, deservedly so. But most of those races have been, largely kind of off your own back and things, compared to if you talk to Elliot or Chris or anyone else, where they've kind of had their sponsors are kind of getting to go to the races. So you're going to those races because you really want to go to them then.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've always enjoyed racing at big races, and enjoyed racing at the races where the best drivers were racing. I always, I say when I was quite young, you would look out a race if you knew that there was big name driver was coming to race. You're like, I want to go to it, because it was as much as wanting to be part of it and wanting to see those guys race as well. So and that's always been part of it for me, I guess.
That's really interesting. I know mine's got stuff I want to come in on here, but I'm just going to derail this a little bit.
Go for it.
I think that's really interesting, and also, appreciate you obviously haven't heard the first part of today's podcast until you listen to it.
No.
And I suppose one of the things that's really interesting for me is always that thing of what is it that makes people want to go to races as well? What makes good races as well? And for me, there's always been that part of it's not reliant on having superstar names there, but that to me, that was why I wanted to go to an ETS race the first time. It's like, I want to go and race. I want to go and see Mark, Ronald, those people as they were at the time, racing on a track. And then I've got the chance to go and put my car on that track as well. And
so I mean, I'm not racing against those guys, but it's great to see them race, and it's great to be able to race, like you say, put your car on the same track and see where that takes you.
Yeah,
and that was one of the things about the Reedy race. When we went to that, it was the Reedy race is a different format. It's got a bit of it's a bit special because it's a one-off race, and the Tamiya track as well has obviously had a bit of sort of myth and legend about it almost, and so that was one of the reasons I wanted to go and do that at some point. So that was a lot of fun as well.
It was, and I think it was nice that we got to go there. 2 years before the end of it? So
I think it was the penultimate Reedy race, wasn't it? I think they had one the year after, and then that was that.
Yeah. So that's been really interesting learning about kind of how you got started and what you've been doing over the years. We'll bring things a bit more up to date and talk about the current racing in a moment. But before we do that, let's just take a quick break, and we'll be back in a minute.
A hydration break, nonetheless.
Sick and tired of winning constant A final after A final, week in, week out? Then say hello to BQ Racing Products, where RC bits are reassuringly expensive to bolt onto your car to guarantee you that place in the B final. BQ Racing Products, where just being a little bit shit is good enough.
Now, perhaps unfairly, when we launched this podcast, your name came up as someone that has maybe bent a few chassis along the way. Any ones that you'd like to mention to us?
Maybe, one or two. I think there's probably a couple that stick out. So probably the earliest one. So Tosca Euro's car was just handling really nastily, and put it on glass. It's like, it doesn't look very flat. But they kind of had a rule. You were allowed to change your chassis, but only if it was broken. But Ben didn't class as broken, but as long as no one could see the plier marks, it was fine. So we solved that problem. But my later, probably sort of more infamous one was when I rejoined Schumacher. So it was in 2020, January 23. So
the Cotswolds.
No.
The Halifax.
Indoors. No, this was indoors. This was indoors. So. I just rejoined Schumacher over Christmas, and they kind of started working on the MI9, really. MI8 was current, but they started working on MI9. They ended up releasing the HGT kit in April time or something like that, but they were kind of working fully on that. So I'd been sent like handmade parts to build effectively what was the spec car they were running at the time, and then I got an MI8 kit to build the rest of it. So it's about a week before, it would have been about a week before the EWS, so end of January. And Granger was persuading me that I ought to go to Newbury to run it, so at least run it before EWS. So fair enough, we goes down there. Took probably a day off work, it's a long way down to Newbury for me on a Friday. And we got car, handmade chassis, arms, quite a few other parts. So around practice, first couple of laps feels good. And then I clipped the outside of the main straight, the front end lifted up, and the car, went basically backwards on fire into the wall. And so Marshall kind of picked it up and was looking a bit sheepish, and kind of brought it back and got it back to the pits. And well, I think basically that chassis could easily have been turned around and used on the front of a two-wheel drive buggy. The top deck was in the shape of a Z. And the chassis had two really, really nasty bends in it. So one just behind the motor mount and one probably just behind the rear bulkheads. The back of the chassis was a good 20 mil off the ground, something like that. So that was probably then. Yeah, handmade chassis. Haven't got a spare one. 2 days before the first DWS. So this is a problem.
Yep.
I bet that was an awkward phone call.
So I'm Peter McGranger. I think Ollie Jeffries and Marcus Usker were sat across the table from us. And Marcus is like, well, I've got some tools in the car. We've got some tools in the van. We could have a go at straightening it. Like, I've got nothing to lose at this point. So there's then, I say the image, but there are no image of this ever taking place. There's Marcus and I outside the sports hall at Newbury over a curbstone with a lump hammer straightening this alloy chassis. and we sort of got it to the point where it's sort of like, well, I mean, it's not flat, but we think we can get everything screwed down to it. So we did. So rebuilt the car back on this chassis that wasn't overly flat, and ran the rest of the club night with that. Probably missed the first round, but I can't remember. And then actually ran it on Sunday and finished 7th, 8th, something like that in the back of the final. And then sheepishly had a word with Andy and said, these chassis, have we got any more? And, fortunately, there was one spare chassis. But,
see, if that had been a Facebook post after that as well, you'd have gently tapped a barrier and that would have been it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I didn't hit anything hard, yeah.
Gently tapped the barrier. I don't know how it possibly happened, the Alistair one.
And the car exploded.
Yeah, it went backwards in the air into the wall into the main straight. So, and I do still have that chassis actually somewhere, and you can still see the creases in it, obviously. So, but yeah, that was quite funny.
Well done.
Thank you.
I do remember a slightly awkward practice session at Halifax last year.
2 cars, 1 practice. Yeah, that was a bit of a challenge.
Took 2 cars, 1 practice, and it's not even 2 laps completed, wasn't it? I believe.
I think we got about 2 laps in the first car and half a lap with the second car, I think, from memory. Yeah, the bumps haven't changed; they're still there.
You were pitting opposite me as well, and you just walked back in and put these 2 cars down. I just looked at you and went, "What are you going to do with that mess?" And he just sighed and went, "Let's just get another car," because it was just two pieces of race cars is the best way to describe what was on the table in front. I genuinely looked at it and thought I couldn't imagine that there was a buildable car out of either of them.
I think there was. I think because it was a carbon car to start with, and then my alloy car, because it was a bit. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to run, and obviously, carbon is what we've always run for years, and alloy wasn't really a thing in the UK until, like I say, we kind of had it in our minds that maybe it might be useful at Halifax, and obviously wanted to try it. And ended up building a car out of the alloy car, and somehow managed to finish 4th in the national. So. I'm quite know how that happened, having barely managed to practice run on the Saturday, but it did. So like I say, Halifax has been good to me over the years.
So let's move on from that. Those incidents.
Yes, too much joviality.
Yeah. We talked. Obviously, you've been racing on road for a long time, pretty much. Since touring cars have been a thing, and you've been involved in. We talked earlier about been involved in the nationals and racing nationals for a large proportion of the time that touring car nationals, I guess, have been there.
Yeah.
So what's your kind of reflection on the current state of touring cars, both in the UK and wider afield as well, both in terms of the racing aspect of things as well, but also the tracks and the facilities that we have, and you mentioned kind of the reason for you wanting to go to some of those other races, Euros, Worlds, Reedy Race and things, was to go to some of the best facilities that are out there as well.
Yeah, I think we all know that the peak of touring car was probably mid to late 2000s, and it's not dead by any stretch of the imagination. It's in reasonable health, but it's also pretty flat, and it's probably been pretty flat for probably 5, probably even 10 years in all honesty. It's not got any worse, and it's not really got much better. And I think off-road is the more popular class again at the moment, and again has been for a while. And it is what it is, I guess. I mean, in the UK, we are starting to struggle a little bit for venues. So we've got. I was trying to think about it a while ago, and I couldn't tell you what the last new touring car track that was built in the UK was.
Probably Cotswolds.
Yeah, to be honest with you, that's about where I got. Certainly of the current national venues, I think Cotswolds is the most recent that was built, I think.
Yeah.
You've obviously got, not been a national venue for a couple of years, but Bedworth as well. That's pretty recent in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, they got sort of moved from one venue to where they are now.
Yeah.
But past that, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you when the last track that was built was, and ultimately that's going to be a problem. Because we are going to run out of tracks. I mean, Halifax has been resurfaced a couple of times and is, with the exception of a little bit of issue, obviously, that we know about on the straight, is probably the flattest there. Cotswolds, Bedworth, not a lot in it. So a little bit of bump on the straight. But, some of our other tracks are, a little bit tired maybe. And, a bit bumpy and... fair play. I know so the guys at Ada have been trying to sort of smooth out their bumps. I think it's probably tricky for them because I think the land is probably not the greatest. I think that moves around a bit. So I've been told by some of the guys down there. It's difficult. We've all been to European races and some of the great European tracks that we've got. Places like Luxembourg, Appledore, and Heemstead. And to be fair, they're all quite old tracks actually as well, but they've all got fantastic facilities, and we've not really got anywhere. Sad as it is to say, we've not really got anywhere to match any of those in the UK. So obviously Halifax is probably closest. They've got their sort of snack area, and they've got their obviously permanent pitting electric. So that's the closest for sure. Cotswolds trying really hard, and actually had a good resurgence really over the last couple of years, which is fantastic, because it was looking a bit dicey there for a while. But that's kind of, if you look at it and said, if we wanted to run a Euros or a Worlds in the UK, where would we run it? And you'd be sort of like, well, Halifax, Cotswolds, that's about it, isn't it? And I guess it's difficult because we know about the great tracks that ETSs are on and stuff, and maybe they're the best tracks in their country, and maybe there's only one or two that are as good as that, and that's possibly true. But it definitely does feel that we have fallen a little bit behind in the UK. But it's tough because it's expensive, and to get land and to lay a bit of tarmac is expensive, and I think that's one of the things that helps the off-road section and off-road clubs is it's a lot. If you find a bit of land, it's manpower. That's pretty much all you need. You can get, most tracks are AstroTurf these days. You can get AstroTurf actually pretty cheaply. I think if you go to some of the companies that do cricket pitches and stuff, you can often get some of their old stuff for next to nothing. In the grand scheme of things, I don't want to sort of lessen it, but in the grand scheme of things, you can build an off-road track a lot cheaper than you can build an on-road track, and that makes it tough for us, And
I suppose by its nature as well, an on-road track, we're talking about tracks being flat and smooth and things like that, and that's what you need for on-road tracks. You need that precision, whereas an off-road track, by its nature, doesn't need to be flat.
By its nature, exactly. So it's a lot easier to build it. It's a lot easier and cheaper to build a track. Like I say, it's still a lot of effort, and I've been there. My local club had a semi-permanent off-road track. Back when I was racing that, and we put a lot of time into it. So it's not easy by any stretch, but it's certainly easy to get started. Than it is trying to build a tarmac touring car track. So it's difficult.
And Martin and I talked at the start of this podcast about the Halifax National and the sort of state of nationals in the UK at the moment. What have you kind of seen from your perspective, again, as a purely as a racer? What have you seen over the years? What's changed? What's been good and what's been bad as well?
I think I always have massive amount of sympathies with the committees because it's just not enough people, and it takes. You guys know yourself from running indoor races. It takes a team, to run races, and when it becomes it's on 2 or 3 people to try and run it, it's impossible basically to do what you want to do. And I think something I sort of thought about a little while ago is it'd be really interesting for the sections of the BRCA to get together and work out what works well for for a national championship, because they've all got different ways of doing it. But so back when I raced off-road, I don't know for certain how they run today, but I presume it's still pretty similar. But the club where the national was basically prepped the track. And then the BRCA team came in and ran it. And obviously that's a completely different model to how touring car has always been. It's always been more on the club to run it, and the sort of committee I won't say pop along and make sure it's run properly, because that's not fair. But it's more the onus is on the club to run it rather than on the section to run it. And that's a massive difference between those two sections. So I think it would be really good for the sections to all sort of get their heads together, and probably being unfair suggesting that sort of thing doesn't happen, but just get their heads together and work out what works, and maybe all individual sections can learn from each other.
You make an interesting point there, and something we've discussed on the side ahead of this is the way that's run, and perhaps the issue that we have is the BRCA provides the rules, but should we have a separate committee for procedure, from procedure and event teams as well? Because they are two very, very different things. Running an event and running a rule book are quite different. So perhaps there's scope there for, like we say, have the group that know the rules, know the procedures, and they work with the event team, and in the event team, preferably people experiencing events. I'm not putting my hands up here. Oli might. That could probably help to get involved with making it more of an event. Perhaps there's leeway to do something there. So we enforce the rules in one area. That's potentially done some of that with the rule book as well. Now, I do know when I spoke to Steph on Saturday, he'd taken up the baton of what we looked at previously about splitting the procedural rules from the technical rules, so that you have your technical directives in one area, and then the team can then apply what's necessary to run the event according to the numbers, and you're not restricted as much. Maybe there's scope in there to do something with that. So if they can push that through, that they potentially need teams, but then it's back to what you said at the start. It's bodies and people to help do these things.
I think it's just different ways of working. And I think you can make, I won't say you can make anything work, because that's not true, but you can, although I say it'd be good for sections to learn from each other, that doesn't necessarily mean what works for one will work for the other. One thing the off-road section I know does, or certainly did, and let's say it's all sort of old information, but I believe it's still true, because they run a lot of the race, the section keeps a lot of the money, which is again completely opposite to how the on-road section works, because the lion's share of the money goes to the clubs, and then the club run the races, so that kind of fits. So it's just a different philosophy. Like I say, the off-road section, they'll sort of provide a steward, a scrutineer, a timekeeper, a referee, chief scrutineer, that sort of thing. But they're the main jobs that are obviously running the race. So it's a different way. It's worked very well for them over the years. Their numbers suggest it's still working for them now. But actually, having said that, I'm pretty pleased with how our national series has been this year. We set out to, wanting to have, pretty close to a full race meeting. Let's kind of go back to, almost go back to basics and try and get a full race meeting, get everyone there, and not split too thinly. And I actually think by and large that's what's happened. So I think that's gone quite well this year, in fairness.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, having the extra classes all in one place has certainly put more people there, and that gets the money into the clubs.
It's not just that. I mean, it was last year and the year before. It was just too rushed, and you end up sort of trying to put artificial breaks in, which kind of is better than nothing. But it kind of this will stop you stop start all the time. If you've got a natural running of sort of between 10 and 12 heat meeting that's continually running, I think everything just flows better, and it just feels like a better meeting. It's not been perfect, and there's some things that can be improved, I'm sure, but I think it's been a better series this year than we've had for a couple of years, in fairness.
So here's a question then, and probably for both of you. Why does it work in off-road and everyone's okay with, if you're not in the A, you get one final, but if you are in the A, they get 3?
I have no idea, and that's a question that's been asked in and around my person for the last 20 years.
Oh, okay.
It's always been, when I grew up doing off-road regionals and off-road nationals, went to my first off-road regional in the early to mid 90s, something like that, and it was just like, that's how it is. It's like, okay, fine, and it was just, that's how it is. And I guess I always saw it differently in that it was something to aim for a regional to get 3 finals.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of the cool thing about making the A finals. You got 3 of them instead of just the one. But you're right; it's never been a thing in Onroad, and whenever it gets suggested, you always get people say, "Well, I'm paying the same amount. I want the same number of races." And I get it. Why I think it's been that way for so long in off-road. No one questions it.
I think it's probably our nature as well. Is that it's having 11 heats is still tough turning a car around properly. So if you've got to do it in what would that be? 4, 4, and 4 would be nigh on impossible. Certainly if you've crashed.
Yeah, I think off-road they do. Certainly when I was last doing it, the A final was first and last, and then obviously there was one in the middle. But I think they did have some breaks in that as well. So the round of finals did take a lot longer than a round of qualifying. So there was maybe a couple of 10-minute slots and all that from memory. I can't be sure, but I
just thought it was worth the ask if there was a gap in there where it was ever thought about.
I like it. But it's what I grew up with, So 3-legged A finals, for me, fine. It would probably be more tricky for us now because we've now got 4 classes. So having 3 legs of 4 A finals and then single legs for everyone else, not sure how that would work. But it's just how it's.
Oh yeah, good point.
It's been.
Yeah, it wouldn't really work out so well now, would it?
I don't think it would. No, your finals round would be quite long, wouldn't it? If you had 3 legs for 4 classes and then single legs for everyone else, that would be quite a lot of races. So.
Oh, I suppose that would naturally give you the gaps back, though. I suppose that you would.
It would. You've got the gaps, haven't you?
So all of a sudden it didn't work, and now technically, I suppose it could work, or just 1 leg finals.
It's a good point. Yeah. Formats and stuff like that has never really bothered me, to be honest with you. It's just, them's the rules. That's the format. Just go and run it and make it work for you as best you can. But we've now got 4 and 2. Okay, fine. 4 and 2 is a little bit of an odd one because the results for the finals can be a little bit weird in the way that overall final results versus championship scores work. Can be a little bit strange, but it doesn't really bother me, to be honest.
I suppose in theory we should really have a podium picture for just leg 1 and leg 2, really, because they are 2 finals. But it's just it's more admin.
2 championship scores, aren't they?
Yeah, they are effectively. Yeah, we run the same indoors.
I mean, I think that's a really interesting point, and I think there's probably people who've studied psychology will be able to comment on this sort of thing. But is that an element that going back to 80s and 90s, the message in off-road was everyone gets 1 final, but if you make the A final, you get a bonus 2 more races. And everyone looked at it that way, as opposed to now where you'd be going to on-road and saying, that's the approach we're going to take. Everyone will say, you're taking races away from me, rather than rewarding the people that sort of make the A final.
I mean, that's how I would feel. For someone that never makes an A final, that's how I would feel.
It's probably different because I guess... So, going way back, tyre wear probably wasn't the bigger issue that it is now. And, with restricted numbers on tyres, you got different ways of making that work and stuff. So, I don't know. There's more complication, I guess. But,
yeah.
It's the same in Nitro. Yourself, the A final is longer than the other finals, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, lower final. I mean,
no one seems to question
it. For ENS, we have 20-minute lower finals. And then it's even A finals for the Premier classes, 1/8 scale and 1/10 scale open classes is 45 minutes, and then for the Masters class and for the Sport class it's 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's just that it's been that that's what it is, and it's like
exactly.
You come and race it or you don't.
And that's how I always looked at it. Then them's the rules, and if you want to go race it, go. If you don't.
Yeah. So, trying to sort of wrap all that together, it's been really interesting chatting to you, and really appreciate all your insights and using your history of both on road and off road races and being part of club racing, national racing, everything else. We talked about where touring car is at the moment. What would you like to see perhaps going forward? If we could give you the magic wand and stuff like that, and everyone's got an opinion on this, and everyone, I think Martin and I talked on the first part of this about how the struggle now is that everyone thinks their opinion is the right opinion and won't listen to anyone else's. So we'll put that caveat piece around this. But what would you like to maybe do with touring cars, or see happening with touring cars in general, both UK, worldwide? Do you think things need to change or improve, or is it all actually pretty good, and it's the relatively small minor things that maybe just need some tinkering around with?
I quite like where we've ended up in the UK, where we've got. I'm kind of going to ignore, no disrespect, but I'm going to ignore certainly F1 and maybe Fronty to a degree. But if four-wheel drive touring car, we've got stock and modified, and for me, that's, like I say, I grew up in an era where everyone raced one class, and that would be my preference. But I kind of long since accepted that that's probably never happening again. Having a single class, certainly throughout the world and stuff. So. If we're going to have multiple classes, not a problem. But I'd rather stick to a smaller number of classes. I know there's the argument of, more classes can bring more people, and at club level, I agree with that. Actually, I don't have a problem with that. I think one thing we also need to think is not every class needs a national.
Yes.
Just because we've got a set of rules for a class, and we should have sets of rules for classes, and we should have national sets of rules for classes, but that doesn't mean we have to run a national.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
We sometimes, someone said at the AGM, the same argument comes up every year. We need a class for beginners, and it's like, well, yeah, we need a set of rules for beginners. We don't need a national for them. And someone else sort of said, don't be afraid of the fact that you are running a national series to find the best drivers. So I agree with that. Mm-hmm. We shouldn't be afraid of that. That is what we're trying to do. We should have rule sets for other classes that can be picked up by clubs, and so that the majority of the clubs can fundamentally run to the same rule set, so people can go and race at other clubs rather than just their own. And so we have sort of national maintained rules that works for that. Yeah, great, but they don't all have to be nationals. So I like the fact that we've got a stock class, a modified class, and that's where we're at. I wish we saw more sort of desire to people to I don't like to use the phrase move up, but I haven't got a better one for it. But to run modified and to go to big races and European races and Wales races and whatever, because I think that's how you learn, and I feel like I've raced in three I sort of categorize it as 3 eras of touring car racing, and it's mainly by the drivers that were doing the winning, in truth. So when I was first racing, the guys doing the winning was David Spashik, Craig Drescher, Chris, a couple of others, obviously. Then kind of the middle era was maybe Oli, Chris, Elliot, and then the modern era kind of as we are today. If you go back, when the Euros were on and the Worlds were on, we as a country knew full well we'd got 4 guys maybe that had a really good chance of being in the final, and a couple of guys that had a really good chance of winning. Doesn't feel like we got that now.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like we got that now, and that feels like a shame. And I remember talking to, I can't remember who it was now. I think it might have been George Land. Very few people are going to know who George was, but he works for. It was
the boss of Helga, which is one of the distributors.
Yeah, licensed distributor, and he always said to people that looking at doing their first Euros, he's like, you'll do all right. You'll make, you won't be in the bottom half. You'll be in the at the very least, you'll be in the top half of the meeting. And people didn't necessarily believe him. And he's like, look, the standard in the UK is really high. It's higher than a lot of European countries. I'm not sure we're there right now, and that feels like a shame. And I feel a lot of that is because people aren't kind of pushing on trying to do the next class up and trying to go to the European race to try and learn that way. So I don't know. I could be wrong. But I think there's something in that, and that's a bit of a shame. But you can't force people. We've all talked over the years about, should there be a rule about, when you've done this, it's like your race. No, there shouldn't. You want people to want to do it, but it's a hobby, so we shouldn't be forcing people. So that's always been a bit of a weird one. But I don't know. I just wish that it definitely feels that we've lost something. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but it definitely feels like we've lost something over the years, if I'm honest.
Yeah, because we definitely, let's be honest, we are not as a country in a very broad sense as competitive on the national scene, on the international scene as we have been.
No, we're not.
I mean, when was the last time a British driver made an A final at any class at an ETS or Euros on road? I think Harley made one, didn't she, a couple of years ago. Yeah, I can't remember where it was, but it's a carpet round somewhere. The carpet round in Vienna. Yes, she made the final there. And that's. I'm not.
Oli
sure
Jeffries probably before that.
Yeah. So we're going back to the late 2010s then.
It's sort of few and far between, isn't it? So we definitely lost something. Like I say, whether it's the fact that people aren't pushing on and trying to, I don't know, but it definitely feels that we've lost a little bit of something.
Yeah.
I mean, the other way, let's be honest here. I often ask the question, should I be as competitive as I, should I still be making A finals, having been racing for so long? Don't know, but
in the nicest way, and we've discussed this with him directly. Yeah. The fact that Chris Granger is still in competition for national titles after doing touring cars since touring cars was invented.
Yeah.
Suggests that we haven't got something coming through to. He said himself he shouldn't have won. I don't think he shouldn't be making the podiums he's making now. In theory, you wouldn't have had someone that age 20 years ago making those podiums, making the A finals.
But even on the European stage, if you look at the ETS finals and you look at the ETS final now, the ETS final 10 years ago, what is there? 6 people, maybe 6 people is probably the same. The same, so it's not just a UK problem. In fairness,
if we were to try and rattle off who we think the top 10 drivers are, it's pretty. 7 of them are going to be the same as they were 10 years ago, and probably 5 of those the same as 20 years ago.
Yep.
Is there a reasonable cause for some people thinking about doing the national, the international scene effectively? And you look at someone like Elliot Harper, and he's the benchmark on the track from the weekend. And when Carl's there as well, Carl's there and he's gone with him. And the fact that if you're a certain level of racing thinking, I'd like to go and compete, but if they go to an ETS, they've got a very good shot of being in that A final and probably quite high up in it. But if you're not close enough to them here, is that maybe putting people off? You think about going to international sides, or if I can't get closer to them in the UK and I go to Europe where there's even more of these drivers, I'm probably, I'm going to be a lot lower down.
I guess you'll never get there if you don't give it a go.
No, that's why you got to go and give it a shot.
And you've got to start somewhere, and you got to start learning it. And it is tough because you're racing against guys with 15, 20 years experience, like you just said, Oli, and you can't learn that overnight. But you got to start somewhere, I guess.
You're also not gonna ever beat them if you're not going and learning it.
No,
exactly true. You won't beat them from home.
Yeah.
No, this is really true. Dan Robbins, actually, he was he just off the A final, wasn't he, the year before at ETS Dawn?
That's true. Yes.
Yeah, he was.
Yes, it was.
He was a hair's breadth for making the A.
Yes, that was when he nicked Granger's car and was running that, I think, from memory.
You've got to want to, though. You're right. If you don't go and try, you don't. I just wonder if maybe somewhere there's along the line you think, well, I can be here like 8, 9, 10 around the A in the UK, and if I go there, I'm probably going to be closer to the E final than I am the A final.
I always found, like I said, I don't do the international races now that I used to. I used to try and do at least the Euros every year, or at least an ETS every year. And last year or the year before was the first time I did an international race for, I don't know, 10 years or whatever. But I always found whenever you did those races, you learned something.
Mm-hmm.
Just even if you just watch what people are doing and how they're prepping stuff, you learn something. So if you don't do it, you don't learn, in all honesty.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important piece, because I think that's a good reflection that I personally think touring cars is in a pretty strong place in the UK at the moment. You're right; it hasn't grown a lot over the last few years, but
no,
we're filling out nationals, we're filling out the winter seasons as well.
We absolutely are. It's a lot. It actually, to say it's flat is probably unfair. It probably is in a healthier place than it was 6-7 years ago, but it's probably not growing anywhere near back to its heights.
Yeah.
Will it?
And then from that, then we are getting some people. Again, it's not back to its peaks, but when we used to have, and it was club guys going. We had 30 people going to ETS races, or 20 people going to a Euros and things like that.
Yeah.
We're not back to that point, but sometimes there are a few more that are heading out to some of those races or trying to experience them as well. So, if people just keep doing it, then that's how.
That's it. I mean, I guess there's probably quite a few going to the next ETS Hoodie Arena.
Yeah.
Again, that's the thing, isn't it? People go to the tracks they want to go to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they're going there because it's the Hoodie Arena.
So do you see the amount of people as the rep, Ollie, has that fluctuated much between who's applying to go and race at these events?
So it's what's really interesting for me, being really honest, is there's not a huge interest in people wanting to go to Euros. There's a bit more interest in people talking about Worlds, but the thing that puts people off the most for that is the cost. And for me, I think the entry fees are ridiculous for Euros and Worlds. For Worlds, it's $250 just as an entry fee, and that gets you a table, doesn't get you any tyres, doesn't get you anything else. And quite rightly, people are going, hang on, I can spend that, or I can spend €70 to enter an ETS race, and I've got arguably the same prestige in terms of what we said before. I'm going to see the same drivers there.
Same drivers, in a lot of cases.
And many cases, you're going to argue actually the ETS is going to be a better organised race as well than a Euros or a World. So I think EFRA and IFMA really need to look at that aspect of things and figure out. I mean, maybe it's just different in the UK, but is that a real factor that's stopping people going? Is that cost element? In the big picture, if you're going to go and travel to an overseas race, you're spending I don't know £500 to £1,000 to go to an event, something like that. By the time you factor everything in, is £100 difference in the entry fee really the deciding factor? But if people are looking at going, that's what I want to spend the money on.
I think people look at it and see it as a deciding factor, but it probably shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Still 4 sets of tyres though, that £100, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 sets of tyres out of the 15 you're going to buy anyway.
Oh yeah, true. For the Worlds.
Yeah.
I think they're more manufacturer driven. The Euros and the Worlds just seems to be the drivers that go there because they have to, and they're the ones that are generally backed by all the factories. And then after that, it's just also ran. Yeah,
there's something in that maybe.
I think a lot of them are. I think a lot of them, if they're not factory backed, you have. I mean, I think this year the Euros in Luxembourg is basically sold out, which is good. But it comes back to the same point. It's a track that people want to go and race on.
Oh yeah, great racetrack. Yeah, incredible.
So that's working in their favour. When it was at Utrecht the previous year, it scraped 100 entries or something, which is a decent number. But when it's the Euros, you kind of go, why are we not? We've got whatever is 300 million population across Europe, and we can get 100 people that want to go and race there.
That's the thing. Like I say, I remember the Euros in Valencia in Spain, and there was 130, 150, 2008, I think it was, something like that.
Yeah,
and it was a full race and way too hot, but we can ignore that for now. But
yeah.
So they have lost a little bit over there, but they probably lost a little bit since ETS started. If ETS wasn't running back then, and people like me that were doing, up for doing 1 or 2 races a year are picking which 1 or 2 races they do now, aren't they?
Yeah.
Whereas back then it was the Euros or the Worlds.
Yeah.
And a big part of what they pick is again the track that you go to.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at going to, I could go to some of the tracks that the Euro's been to haven't been the best ones, or I can go to Hoodie Arena, or I can go to Appledorn for the ETS. Well, those are the tracks I'm going to go and pick.
I think it comes back to that.
Yeah.
People go to the venues, to the tracks they want to go to.
Yeah. Right. I think that's been a really great chat with you, Matt. Thank you very much for your time. We're going to take a small break here, and then we'll come back and wrap everything up.
This is the Ben Chassis Podcast. An hour of your life you're not going to get back.
Well, that's been a really interesting and insightful chat with you, Matt. So thank you very much for your time to join us this evening and join us on the podcast. Thank you very much.
No problem. It's been fun. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Thanks for your insight and all your experience, all the years. Nearly as experienced as Chris Granger.
Nearly. Yeah, not quite. You've got a couple of years on me.
Thank you very much for being here tonight, Matt. We've really appreciated your time.
And hopefully all you listening along as well as have appreciated that too. And it's been an interesting couple of weeks, and plenty more action to go in the on-road scene around the UK and around the Europe and the world as well. Join us again for another episode of the podcast in a couple of weeks' time. We don't know what we've got coming up next, so you can be as surprised as we are when you find out on that one. But thanks very much for joining us on the Ben Chassis On-Road podcast. This has been episode 13.
Bye for now.
Fast laps, clean lines, that's how we go. Thanks for tuning in to the Ben Chassis On Road podcast show.